What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 10th Doctor David Tennant story, The Girl in the Fireplace. This is, of course, episode 4 from series 2 and Stephen Moffat's second story for Doctor Who. And this is, of course, before he was showrunner. And yeah, The Girl in the Fireplace is a story that I've always really liked. It's one that's kind of, jumped around a little bit as to how exactly I regard this one, whether I regard it as like a absolute classic or I always think it's really good, but I'm always, I'll say it right now, I'm always on the verge of like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 with this story, and it kind of bounces back and forth every time I watch it. So it was interesting to go through this one, write some notes down, and properly figure out what I want to give this story. So let's get started with the cast. David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. He is so good in this story. I mean, he's always so good for me. He's my favourite Doctor, I keep saying it. But in this one especially, very good. Of course, there's a lot of romance-y stuff going on here. And, the Doctor does seem to have a bit of a romance with Madame de Pompadour as well. It's not just a one-way thing here. But I still... I don't know, I really like... the chemistry between David Tennant and the actress who plays Madame de Pompadour, the chemistry between them is really good. And yeah, he's just so good throughout this whole story. Billie Piper as Rose Tyler is also pretty good. It takes quite a backseat in the story. The companions of Rose and Mickey definitely aren't the biggest focus in this story. It is much more the Doctor and Madame de Pompadour. So they do kind of get sidelined a little bit, and it is a little bit unfortunate. We've got two companions here, and they both kind of get sidelined. But for what she's given, Billie Piper is very good here. And yeah, of course, Noel Clarke as Mickey Smith as well. He's also fine. He has some funny little moments, like, what are you looking at? Looking at the eye, and it like jumps out at him, and he does that little squeal. And then I love the whole thing when the horse on the spaceship, which we'll get to later, and Mickey's like, why would you have a horse on a spaceship? I love that whole scene as well. So yeah, the whole cast in this one, including Madame de Pompadour, really good. Alright, so let's get on to some points for this episode. A doorway from a spaceship to 18th century France. So the TARDIS crew land on this spaceship, and yeah, they find this fireplace that spins around. It brings them brings the Doctor specifically into 18th century France. They then find another doorway that also puts them there as well, but they're all at different times. So it's this really interesting concept of time windows, which is something that's done in sci-fi quite a lot, time windows. But this is a really interesting way of doing it, and I've always really liked it. It's a cool concept, really good stuff there. The ticking clock thing is the same as parts from Empty Child. Now, this is one thing that I can't say that I have an issue with, but watching these analytically now, I have more of an issue with. I brought it up in The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, which was Stephen Moffat's story written for Series 1, where you had the scene with the typewriter, where the typewriter kept typing, and it was like, well, if this kid's not using the typewriter, then who is? And it's like this big reveal, like, oh no, the typewriter's typing by itself. And then there was also the same thing with the recorder. It's like, well, the recording stopped, so who's talking? Oh, reveal, the kid's there. It was the same thing, and it's exactly the same thing here with the ticking clock. You can hear a ticking clock in this room. The clock on the wall is broken, but there's still a ticking. So if there's a broken clock, what's making the ticking? It's even set up the same, like that. It's very noticeable when you look at it analytically like this. I like it. It's a good concept. It's a good storytelling thing. It builds up the tension. But when you actually look at this properly and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, it's like, okay, this is the third time in, well, I guess technically 3 episodes that this same trope has been used by Stephen Moffat. The ship is made up of human parts, so that's what I mentioned a bit earlier with Mickey looking in the machine into the ship, and there was the eye there. So yeah, they see an eye, they see a heart, they see like flesh in there as well. The ship is made of human parts, kind of like patched up with the ship, and we figure out why that is later on. But it's a very grim, very grim picture. I like the whole thing where, when they first land, they're like, oh, it smells like someone's having a barbecue here. Someone's cooking a nice meal. When they finally figured out that there's human parts in this machine and everything's getting very hot, the doctor's like, barbecue. That scene is like, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's grim. The horse gag is great. I mentioned this before. I love the moment with the horse. I don't know why, it's just so funny, and it's one of my favorite moments in Doctor Who. That sounds so stupid, but I just love that moment where the Doctor finds the horse and then he's walking through the ship and the horse is following him around. He's like, "Stop following me, I'm not your mother." And then when he finally, recoups with Rose and Mickey, he says, "Why is there a horse? Why is there a horse here? Where'd you get a horse from?" He says, "Why is there a horse on a spaceship?" And he said, and the Doctor's like, "Why is 18th century France on a spaceship, Mickey? Get some perspective." I love that moment. It's just so good. The clockwork droids need to wait until Renette is 37 to take her brain. So yes, it works out. We find out that all these parts in the machine they're human. Well, we know they're human parts, but they need the brain to completely rebuild the ship, to completely fix the ship. They need the brain of Madame de Pompadour for whatever reason. We'll figure that out later as well somewhat. But she needs to be at a certain age before they take her brain. That's why they keep jumping into these time windows at different points, trying to get to the point they need to be when she's 37 and her brain is ready. So they think that is what the case is. The Doctor is like, no, that's not, you don't need to wait, but for some reason they think they need to wait. So once again, a cool little just, it's robots not really understanding everything here, they've got an idea of what they've got to do here, but they're not really putting it all together because they're not human, they're robots after all. The Doctor has to break through the mirror, trapping himself in the 18th century and leaving Rose and Mickey behind. Now, on paper, I like this. He's trying to save Renette. This was never supposed to happen. He must have known that this wasn't a fixed point in time thing. I don't know how he figures that out, but he must have I guess he just knows that based on, because Madame de Pompadour, I don't know if she's even a real person. They make it out to be that she's a real person, so maybe she is. I don't 100% know. Not great with my history like that. But so I guess if she is a real person, or at least in this universe, she's a real person. He knows that, she goes on to do all these other things. So this must not be a fixed point in time, so he can stop it from happening. So he crashes through the only window he can go through at that time is the mirror. He breaks through that with the horse, which I think is a spectacular moment. But then that then breaks the link. The clockwork droids die, and the Doctor now can't get back. He is now stuck there with her in the 18th century. So I'm like, okay, cool. He's trying to save Renette and all that sort of stuff. Awesome. But he just leaves Rose and Mickey on the ship. Like, he just leaves them there. What is his point here? He goes constantly on about how he's sad to be leaving Rose behind and putting her in danger, but he's just left her and Mickey on a ship floating in space all alone. Did he not think about that? The original fireplace window was still open so the Doctor can get back. So yes, it turns out that the original fireplace is still open, and because it's the original link or something, the Doctor can actually use that and get back again. So he manages to get back to Rose and Mickey. However, not all is happy, because he's talking with Renette. Renette and Madame de Pompadour. She has two names, by the way. She goes by both, so that's why I'm calling her both. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've seen the episode, so you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he talks to her and he says, because she wants to go and travel, he's like, look out there at the stars, pick a star, I'll be right back. We're going to go and check out a star. We're going to go, into space, check something out. And straight away, that, yeah, no, it's not going to work out, is it? The Doctor goes back for Renette, but she has died. So yes, of course, I mean, if you've watched Doctor Who before, you've just watched shows like this before, sci-fi drama before, the whole build-up of everything, you know that it's not going to end up working, and it turns out that she died, and the reveal of it is really good. At first, it's like, you see her husband talking to the doctor and saying, she's leaving the castle for the last time. The way he's talking, you don't really know at first, like, is she dead? Is she just leaving for some other reason? But then, he says 46 or 45, I can't remember how old, 40 something when she died. And that whole scene hits really hard, and the emotion, the doctor's trying to keep the emotion back, but you can see in his face that he is severely saddened by this, and he's let her down basically. And finally, the ship is called SS Madame de Pompadour. So that is the big thing at the end. The ship is called SS Madame de Pompadour. The robots need the brain of Madame de Pompadour because the ship is named after her. And I think from what I remember, it was 37 because that was how old the ship was or something like that. So it needed to, line up with that. Yeah, I think it's a really cool ending. The way it just kind of pans over, the TARDIS disappears, the picture of Renette, Madame de Pompadour is there behind the TARDIS, and the ship kind of moves and you see SS Madame de Pompadour on the outside of the ship. I think it is a beautiful, beautiful end. So yeah, The Girl in the Fireplace has some issues, definitely has some issues that I hadn't really said before. I mean, some of them aren't really issues. The only things really are the whole ticking clock thing I like as a concept, but has been used before in Stephen Moffat's previous story. So it's not really a problem, but it is a little bit of a thing in the back of my mind that I'm like, you're just reusing the same sort of tropes again, but okay. And then the only other thing really is, the Doctor just leaving Rose and Mickey behind seems a little bit out of character, to be honest. Yes, I know he's trying to help Madame de Pompadour, but it seems a bit harsh to just leave them behind. So yeah, a rating out of 10. I'm going to give The Girl in the Fireplace a 9 out of 10. It's not quite a 10. It's gone back down to a 9 for me again. I thought about maybe a 9.5, but I think those couple of little issues just drag it back to a 9 for me. It's still very good. It's not as good as Empty Child Doctor Dances for me, for sure. And I don't know, it's going to be a while till I get to Forest of the Dead, Silence in the Library, but yeah, that's one I also have a few little issues with, so it'll be interesting to see how I feel with this compared to that one. And then Blink in Series 3, we all know how good Blink is, so fair to say I think that's going to get a pretty good grade, but yeah, a 9 out of 10 for The Girl in the Fireplace. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.